Good morning, everybody. I hope you've all got enough space. Welcome to the sexy world of customer service and customer care. Actually delighted that you could all join us. We've got a few people joining us. Come in, take a seat, and relax. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about how you can get closer to your customers. And in order to help us do that, we've got our mascot here, Zendesk mascot here, who's known as Buddy, as just been told. He looks great on a T-shirt, as well as very popular. In fact, there's a whole range of Buddy merchandise available now. And come up and give me your business card afterwards. I'll make sure you get a T-shirt or a baby grow or whatever it is that you need within your organization. My name is Matt Price. I run Zendesk in Europe. I've been with the company for a couple of years now. And what we're going to do today is split the presentation into a couple of sections. Really what we want to do is talk to you a little bit about some of the things that we've learned about how businesses can innovate in the area of customer care in order to drive up customer loyalty. And what are the drivers around customer loyalty? What are the things that you can focus on within your business to really make a difference on it, specific things? And then Nick will, who runs marketing for us within Europe, will talk about some very specific things that you can do in the area of customer care in order to improve your operations. But before I do that, I thought the best way to actually introduce our vision of customer care was maybe show you a little video. The interesting thing across all of this is that when we ask customers, having seen that story, what's changed in the last 10 years about that customer interaction? And obviously we can identify a number of things, but firstly the maturity of e-commerce and the usage and purchasing through mobile and web devices is massive, and disruptive technologies such as collaboration and sharing. The second one that's really big is the proliferation of mobile devices in the last 10 years in order to interact from web. And the third one is social. So within the last 10 years, we've seen three major dynamics that totally affect the way companies interact with their customers. Customers interact with each other in order to recommend things. And that was really the origins of Zendesk. So three founders about 6 years ago had actually come out of the world of implementing systems that are 10 years old and found that they were most of the projects they were engaged with in customers, in order to get a basic level of functionality for customers, took about 6 months to implement, cost about $250,000. And once they were deployed, they were kind of out of date, and the agents didn't like them. The user interfaces were very much akin to enterprise software rather than the software that they were used to using on a day-to-day basis. So what they did was created Zendesk, which was an online customer self-service system. And basically, it grew, and it's now used by about 30,000 companies worldwide, hundreds of thousands of agents, ranging from many one or two people organizations all the way up to organizations who have thousands of agents all working and collaborating on Zendesk. Now, the reason to those people actually on a daily basis, because this is a multi-tenanted SaaS system, are doing millions and millions of transactions or customer care transactions through the Zendesk platform. Obviously, each of them have got their own customization, and they're doing that. And the reason for telling you about this is not to prove that this SaaS internet thing might just catch on and can actually work from a viral model, but point to something that we found very interesting, and a couple of years into growing the business really put the light on for us. And the company grew to about 5,000 customers without hiring any salespeople, and then gradually built out and evolved the business. And so we found, so SaaS is great for disruption. Okay, you can disrupt using a subscription model. You can disrupt by creating a better, easier to use product that really works. But the thing that struck us on the basis of this was on those millions and millions of transactions, we suddenly were getting an insight or an interest into a huge range of what was successful for customers in customer care, ranging from right across different market segments to different sizes of business to B2B. And so we started to change our vision a little bit. And rather than being the company that disrupted the traditional world of customer care software by making it simpler, easier to use, less expensive to deploy, less expensive to own, we started to focus on becoming a company that was disrupting and changing the way that businesses do customer care. And by taking that huge amount of data that we have and the insights that we have, starting to evolve benchmarks and insights around that. So as a result of that, we created a team that is focused on analyzing this information, looking for best practices within customer care and customer interaction. We have an online interactive benchmarking system where organizations can choose their sector and their size or their type of business and compare their core metrics according to other businesses. And then we have a team that is generating content and focusing on content development and education of businesses. So in any month, Zendesk is producing 4 or 5 different reports or analysis on best practice in customer care, building things into the product, running face-to-face meetings and free trainings for organizations. So our shift has very much moved now, not just from being a disruptor in technology, but for being a disruptor in customer care. And the insights, whilst not necessarily groundbreaking, in many cases are incredibly exciting. And we've been able to actually get some proof points by looking at this data that help us to really understand what the core generators are for the business. And ultimately, what we're looking at driving and what our customers are looking at driving or understanding is customer satisfaction or customer loyalty. And I don't think it's any surprise to anybody who's acted as a consumer or a buyer of B2B services or somebody that's actually providing those services that happy customers buy more. But not only do they buy more, they tell other people who are recommending. And the interesting stats are, as a happy customer experience will, more often than not, that person or that company will refer 5 other companies. And we know this from the metrics we've seen. A poor interaction or an unhappy customer will firstly stop buying or not expand so quickly and tell a lot of other people to go elsewhere. And moving back to the dynamics that we've seen with social, of course, it becomes a whole lot easier to do that. So whereas 10 years ago, the scale by which an unhappy or happy customer could tell more people was less. Now it's grown significantly. And actually, we see this in our own business. The vast majority, even though we spend significant amounts on paid search and other routes to market, the vast majority of the people that come to us as a business are people who have been referred to by other customers. And tracking that promotion or that net promoter is incredibly important. So we looked and did some more research, and we said, okay, what is it the thing that drive customer loyalty then? What are the key drivers that do that? The first thing, more than anything, was that at the top of the list, 88% of people said the quality of the product or service was the number one driver in loyalty. That means that the product works, it does what it says it's going to do, and it continues to act. What's interesting on this study is that only 50% of people said price. So actually, people differentiate, the consumers and businesses are differentiating more on the quality of service, and they will look at price performance versus features and not on quality. So consumers are not prepared to compromise quality for price on product, which hopefully is for anybody within the room who's actually delivering a product or service, not a surprise. But it definitely helps to focus the mind when setting different price points and price levels. The second thing then, 72% of people said that the customer care that they receive as part of the product is a big driver in customer satisfaction and customer loyalty. So products, quality, then customer care, then price. The interesting thing here in establishing what levels of services that you're providing then is that you can start to make some interesting decisions as you're packaging of services. So for example, making sure not to put high service level, features that require high service level in low-cost plans or low-cost products, and structuring your service according to that. So firstly, quality trumps price. When customers were asked what's the best way a customer can actually build loyalty with you, the highest response was offering high-quality 24/7 support. Now, for organizations that are reasonably small and maybe don't want to stay up all night or offer 24/7, there are actually techniques that Nick will talk about in which that can actually be derived. But the number one factor in driving customer loyalty was around the quality of support and support interactions. The third thing was when is the most critical time for a company to gain your loyalty, and we looked at 4 different stages. It's when when a customer was just considering buying or looking at you. The second thing was when they make their first purchase. The third thing is when they make their first customer service interaction. And the fourth thing is when they're considering leaving you from somewhere else. Okay. So at what point can you actually focus on to make the biggest impact? Well, firstly, if a customer's already looking at buying something else or moving somebody else, it's too late. Only 1% of companies said that of people questions said that you can win me back at that point. Only 11% said that they felt any loyalty to a brand or a particular product before they'd actually purchased or before they'd interacted in customer care. So establishing loyalty through marketing or early processes is difficult. However, 48% said that their first buying experience was the most important factor on the loyalty to the business, i.e. how that first experience was. And then 40% said their first customer care interaction was the most important determinant of their customer loyalty as well. So those two things combined are hugely important, offering service and making sure that those things get delivered. So then we looked at what are the key drivers of customer interaction. So we know, obviously what Zendesk does and what we focus on is we support within that customer, within that first onboarding process, but the big thing then is focusing on customer care and that customer interaction. So we know customer interaction is hugely important to customer service. And rather than thinking of customer care as this cost to the business of once you've solved the product, there's a whole bunch of people in a back office in some place that's nowhere near headquarters because it's cheap. Starting to then think about how you use customer care and drive customer care and customer interaction in order to drive value. And what are the key metrics around that really push really push things forward. And we found that there were two things that interact. Whatever segment we look at, whatever type of business we look at, whether it's small business, large business, B2C or B2B, there are two things, and we call them the two Ps. And the first one is promptness, and the second one is personality. Promptness is very much around one core metric that drives all customer satisfaction. And the way we measure, by the way, customer satisfaction is that whenever anybody closes a ticket within Zendesk or closes an interaction, the customer has an option to send an email to them. The customer saying, were you happy with this interaction? Yes or no? And that's an email that goes out. And what we find is that there's a reasonably high response rate or sample rate on the back of that. Incidentally, the best agents get the best response rates. So actually, you can measure an agent satisfaction, but if their response rate on their tickets is high, then they're usually killing it. And that's a big indicator for those guys. Are you happy, yes or no? The interesting thing that then comes out of that is that you then get a metric as a business as to how those customer service interactions are impacting. So there are other things that you'll measure, and there are other things that we help with, like Net Promoter Score, which should really be determined at different customer lifecycle stages. But this one is particularly, were you happy with that customer care interaction? And far and away, the biggest indicator on customer satisfaction with regards to support tickets was how quick you respond. Time to first response is the biggest one. Now, there's a whole bunch of things then that once you understand that metric, you can think about from an operational perspective or a support perspective to organize your resources in order to drive that up. And Nick will talk about those in a minute. But this chart shows here a point whereby, obviously, there was a spike in tickets for an organization. Their response, and this is an actual customer here, obviously we've made it anonymous, where they had a spike that took their first response up to 28 hours. So just over one working day. And their customer sat rate on tickets went down to 80%. They managed, a few months later, they were able to drop that down to 10 hours, and the sat rate on those tickets went up to 88%. Now, let's roll that back a second. And if we understand, for example, that after a single customer interaction can have a dramatic impact upon customer loyalty, which has repeat buying and recommendation power, if this organization who is, let's say, for example, handling 1,000 tickets, that's 80 customers a day, that's 80 customers a day that are getting a better support experience and becoming more promoters than not, based upon dropping their first response down from 28 hours to 10 hours. So the number one metric to focus on is customer sat, and then obviously what's driving that is the promptness of response. Now, there are some other things that you can look at as a business as the next step that's around this are very interesting, which are reopen rates. That's a good customer sat metric, or first handle time response, so being able to close the ticket in the first interaction with the customer. That is a huge driver on your own internal productivity as well. So there are certain things you can do. For example, as management, is look at what your reopen rates are on tickets, and that's also going to give you the biggest indicator of fixes that you can put within your organization or in your service that are going to help your productivity and response. So I mentioned another thing then, which is priority. So again, this is from studies. So number one thing for customers, how quickly do you respond? The second thing for them was the personality of the agent. How well was the person who was responding to the ticket be able to connect with me as a human being, or the organization connect with me as a human being to the brand? We like to use an analogy for this. So for those of you who are from London or will remember being here, some of you might have visited for the 2012 London Olympics. And you might remember that before the Olympics, there was this huge doom and gloom across the whole of Britain that it was all going to go wrong. And so the level of confidence that the trains were going to run on time, traffic was going to be okay, security issues, was going to be the primary determinant. Well, actually, as it happened, all of that stuff just worked. And there was huge amounts of effort in order to do that. There were helicopters over London with heat-seeking sensors looking for hot points on the railway lines, such that teams could immediately get in there and fix those railway lines before they actually became a problem. But if you ask anybody within Britain now, if you ask anybody that came to the games, apart from what was on the track or on the field, apart from the sport, what the most memorable thing was, it was these guys. And there was an army of people called games makers. And the London Olympics did a really, really clever thing with the games makers, is that they allowed these guys to deliver some of their own personality. And rather than just being boring, according to a set of rules and allowed to act, they were allowed to interact with customers and interact with people and using their own style and personality and engage with them on that basis. But they were trained to do it in such a way that actually if somebody had a problem, and it was a serious problem, his glove comes off, his hat comes down, and he's interacting and showing a level of gravity. But if somebody wants to be happy, then they're happy as well. And you see nearly all of the best examples that go viral of customer care you see on the internet are from the company that people think is a stiff organization where they've shown some personality. They've written a letter to the kid. They've engaged. There's one recently you might have seen where the client comes on and says, "Ahoy there, Captain, I think I have a problem." And the support agent comes back and says, "Sorry to hear that, Skipper. What can I help you with?" And there's this whole dialogue in this kind of fake captain, skipper kind of action. The agent wasn't able to solve the problem. It was a problem within the product, but the satisfaction of the client at the end was massive. So obviously you have to be careful on this, and training is important. But the level of personality of interaction with customers was the second most important thing that customers put in rather than response time. And I think it's really important as we run our businesses to actually take a step back from that and understand what we like as consumers and how we like to be interacted with and how we like to support. And if we can apply that to our own business, that makes sense. The third thing then, which is around personality or personal service, is please make sure that if I'm interacting with you as a business, you understand a little bit about me. There's nothing worse than having an interaction with you and you not knowing that the person that I'm dealing with, I've had an issue with the product before. Or you don't know that I've tweeted about this issue. Or you don't know that I told you 3 weeks ago in a Net Promoter Score survey that I was unhappy and thinking of leaving. And this stuff actually isn't hard. And actually by taking stuff off smoothly, you can make a dramatic change in order to do that. And actually, whether you're a company of one person or you're a company of 100,000, there are some techniques you can do, which Nick will take you through right now. And the key word to this is beautifully simple. I guess that's key words, right? So Nick.
Thanks, Matt. Ooh. Can you hear me? Yeah. So how do we do great customer service, great support? There's 3 things to focus on that we believe are critical, and they drive the points that Matt's been talking about. In terms of deflection, we call that self-service, no touch. The sorts of interaction that your customer can have without actually needing to speak to a human being. We use the on symbol because often businesses in a high growth environment come up and they say, "Oh, we're not ready for customer support yet. We only get 2 or 3 emails a week. We can cope with that." And we say, if you really want to scale your customer service experience, you need to switch on self-service and you need to do it quickly. Every single time you solve a problem can become an article and a way that somebody ultimately can come and serve themselves in the future. Efficiency. Link your departments together. Focus on the customer, align your teams, make sure that issues are escalated and drive through the process properly, but give that flexibility for someone's personality to come through in how they deal with it. Also, never forget quality. constantly measure, refine, report, go back again, measure again. How can you make improvements? Where are the holes? Where is it things falling down? Self-service is a brilliant source of vital data around how customers interact with you, how they work with your product, and ultimately, go on to become great promoters and champions for your brand or service. We break customer service into 3 core components: self-service, customer support, where people actually get through to speaking to your agents, and customer engagement, where those customers either help other customers or go on to work for you in promoting your brand. So looking at self-service, I have a little video, but there's probably no audio, which is cool. I can talk you through it. We've all been to a coffee shop, and you walk in, and there's a long line of people standing in a row. The guy at the front is saying, yes, my name's Jeff. The next one says his name's Darth Vader because he wants the Starbucks representative to call out some funny name. A lot of customers like the express lane. They like to be able to go serve themselves, get an answer, get out quickly. In this instance, self-service has made one person really happy and enabled them to jump the queue, solve their problem, and get on with their job. Interestingly, when we talk about self-service, a lot of companies say, oh no, but you need to speak to a customer. Customers want to speak to us. Well, they do, but the statistics tell us that 91% of people would happily use self-service if it was tailored to them. If it met their needs, solved their problems, and enabled them to get on their way. And ultimately, 67% of people would actually prefer to do that over speaking to one of your reps. So while we think about no touch and self-service as being perhaps an impersonal way of helping a customer, it's actually how they prefer to be dealt with. Ultimately, people don't like to feel like dunces. How many times, if you're running an internal support team, do you have to deal with someone who's, where's the on button? Where's my login details for the service? All of these very simple queries can be dealt with efficiently and smoothly by self-service. So you've got your great self-service machine. Just Giving, the charity fundraising website, they reported that in 1 year alone, in their busiest period for the London Marathon, by implementing a self-service function, their email inbound traffic dropped by 50% year on year. And they were still growing in that process, still having more people fundraising, more people giving, but ultimately people were able to find the solution. Where do I pay money in? How do I start my page? Quickly and efficiently without having to speak to a customer service rep. When you're looking at self-service, we think it breaks into 3 easy components. You have a knowledge base, which everybody's familiar with, frequently asked questions, articles, forum responses, areas where you can post the very simple instructions on how to use your service, your product, or your good. Then we have community, where you can expand on the queries. Apple does this very well. Their forums are staffed almost exclusively by the Apple fanboys that go in there and will answer your query for you. They're only too pleased when you post a query. Everybody who's in those forums loves to be able to solve the problem for you. And those great promoters are in there working, engaging, and driving your portal forwards. Then when you look at customer portal, if you've got the system effectively running, how many of us have dealt with customers who week in, week out, or perhaps they need to come to your service once a quarter to update their advert, or maybe only once a year, and they forget their login details and they send you an email. With an effective customer portal, I can self-serve myself a second time. So when I log in, I can see the query I raised last year that said, where's my login details? What's my password? How do I get the service to work? I can look at the answer you gave me last year and serve myself without having to come back to you. These 3 things together provide me with a great experience. I can use search facilities and get the knowledge base answers. I can get the community to help me, and they'll probably speak my language perhaps better than your customer service people. And ultimately, I can look at the answer you gave me last year and help myself. All of these things go together really well to drive customer service. Your portals should be an extension of your brand. They should take the best bits of your color, your look, your personality, and be an immersive experience. There's a great example of Seatwave here. They've taken their customer portal and they actually link 2 or 3 other systems into it, so that when you search for a ticket ID or an order ID, it pulls another system and gives you the most important information first, without you having to go looking for more and diving into the system. So you can use the metrics to understand how your customers are interacting with you, where their challenges are, and how they need to be served in order for you to serve the information better in the future. Moving on to customer support. This is the core function. This bit is perhaps the only bit of the process that you should gear around your agents and your process. Enable the agent to be able to work simply and easily to see the core aspects that they need in order to be able to solve the customer problem quickly. Link into third-party apps, use APIs, so that the agent has a single view of the customer. They can see how many orders have they placed, what issues have they had in the past. The quicker you can give the information to the agent, the quicker you can influence the speed, the quality, and the other issues that Matt talked about earlier in the presentation. The most interesting thing about your core support is if you get customer self-service working well before you start, your agents that are working in this environment who are dealing with your level 2, level 3 or escalations actually become happier. The guys over at Expedia once told us that, and a couple of other customers have told us that when self-service is in place and the very simple answers are being solved, the customer support agents only have to deal with challenging issues, where they have to use their brain, where they have to think about the customer, think about what it is they're trying to achieve, and come up with a creative way to solve their problem. And you actually end up with those core customers, customer support agents being happier and more motivated within the department. We live in a world of big data and never more so than in the core area of customer support. Measure everything. We look at agent performance, we look at 12-week rolling averages, group scorecards, response rates between departments, response rates on different issues. And you can use this to help shape your product, your development teams, and your alignment. Moving on to engagement. Let's not forget and lose sight of that ultimately the other end of the conversation is a customer. That customer doesn't think in silos, they don't think in your departments, they don't think in processes. They purely think, I'm trying to use this good, I'm trying to use this service, and it's not working today. So when they interact with you, if you're really going to engage with them, as Matt said earlier, you need to understand if they've raised an issue before, if they've sent you an email or they've called, and then they tweet. There's no point having a siloed social media team that can respond with, sorry, we failed you, call our customer support department. But the reason they took to Twitter in the first place was because the customer support department hadn't solved their problem. You really need to link all of these things in together to ensure that you're able to engage with your customer. Because ultimately your customer just thinks they're dealing with one person. They equate the brand with your customer support people. They don't equate the brand with the different support teams that you have. So it's really simple. Keep the customer at the heart of everything you do and align your services and your channels around it to ensure that the customer support agent can deal with that customer smoothly and efficiently. Everybody knows that news travels quickly, and never more so than in terms of engagement. If you can turn your customers into promoters, then they will talk for you. Sadly, bad news travels quicker and further than good news. It's much harder to get people to become a promoter for you, but they're all too willing to tell people how negative their experience has been. But really, focus on the good. 87% of people will tell somebody else about a good experience. 33 of them will share it with more than 5 people. But when it comes to bad news, 64% will share with more than 5 people. those interactions you have with your customers are really important. The quicker you can solve their problems, the higher your satisfaction, the more likelihood that they will be in the good news section rather than the bad news section. When it comes to community, people love badges. From the days when you were a Boy Scout and you were sewing badges on your sleeve to say that you were a great communicator or that you could tie knots, it's built into us from a young age. You go to the dentist and the dentist gives you a sticker to say you were a good person and you didn't cry too badly. People like this. So look to reward your community with badges. Look to ensure that they can be recognized amongst their peers as somebody that really loves you and understands you. Use the NPS score to understand your customers and listen to them. In conclusion, for a previous presentation we did at a gaming show, we asked a bunch of customers to give us some feedback about what they thought was most important. We still use this one today because it really sums up what we're here and we're all trying to do. Customer service is really difficult. It nearly always starts from a negative standpoint. It's very rare that someone rings your customer support team just to say thank you, what a great product. In this instance, remember that every issue is an opportunity. In today's challenging environment, speaking to a customer and selling another product to a customer is great. The more you can, it's easier to sell to an existing customer. It's a challenge to keep an unhappy customer. But every single interaction, every issue is an opportunity for you to engage with your customer. If you can get to the bottom of why that one customer is unhappy, you may still lose them, but the valuable insights you'll get will enable you to keep other customers and be more proactive in how you go out there to deal with issues that crop up. So, keep it simple. Don't think in silos, don't think in departments, just focus on the customer. Enable customers to help themselves, because self-service benefits the customer and your agents. Customers get support quicker, agents get to do the things that they like doing rather than answering simple questions. Focus on speed and quality, and embrace the power of your own community to both be your promoter, your support staff, and ultimately help you. So that's it from me. I hopefully got us back on time. Anybody got any questions? For me or Matt?
Can be for you.
Is it a hard one? Or an easy one?
No, it's a nice one.
Is it a fluffy marketing one?
No, I was wondering, you've got all this data about, customer satisfaction compared to how long it takes for a company to answer. Would be interesting to dig into this in terms of different sectors or geographies or size of businesses or emergency aspects. Of course, you have all these data, and do you share them with your customers?
Do you want me to do this?
Yeah, if you go to Zendesk.com, if you select on benchmark there's an interactive tool where you can choose your company size, market sector, and I think it gives 3 or 4 core metrics where you can compare yourself to those other organizations. Also within the product, just on a daily basis, those metrics are used as comparison points or indices such that all of your support team and managers can see how well they're performing against the sector that you opt into.
Yeah, zendesk.com/benchmark.
Yeah. Do you record the satisfaction thanks to the payment method? Have you the feeling that the payment into the process, that the customer, the means of payments is having an impact on the quality on the? Yeah,
I think we capture multiple data points, and if you're tagging the interaction with your customer or your customer profile includes how they made a payment, then we use a business intelligence service called Good Data, and that enables you to pull those reports, and you can report across multiple functions. So type of customer, interaction, length of time, and their satisfaction.
Any more questions? All right, one final thing, there may well be some startups in the room. Zendesk runs a startups program, so if you qualify for that, if you have a certain level of investment, then we'll provide the service free for a year for you in order to do that, so you can get going. And actually, pretty much everything that Nick showed can just be switched on and used, so you don't have to have a huge degree of sophistication. You can just start answering customers, and all the metrics kind of come off the back end for you, so you don't have to worry about that. And so more established customers don't feel left out on that. We're offering equivalent amount of free training and support to any of the people here as well. So I think we have the details of people that signed up. If you hadn't signed up, then retroactively sign up for the session on the NOAA website, and we'll make sure that you get details of that as well. So, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.